Peace to the family. Whew, I've had this in my craw for a few days. I made a video about a viral subject, about a pastor and entertainer. What's the brother's name? Marvin Sapp. I want to call him the football player's name, but Marvin Sapp. I made a video off the cuff. I think it was a pretty good video because I kind of maintained a balanced position in regards to how preachers are oftentimes portrayed in the media and in literature. So now I really need to fully expound on it. And as always, the framework that I'll be coming from is, based upon the seminal work of Mr. Neely Fuller, with a big add-on by Dr. Francis Cress Wellesley. Haven't been given the name of the book by Dr. Fuller correctly, so in this video I'm going to give the correct name. And the correct name of the book is the United Compensatory Code System Concept Textbook, Revised Edition, a compensatory counter-racist code. Affectionately, we call it the code. Okay? And the code speaks of the 9 areas of people activity, with a 10th added by Dr. Wellesley. And the 10th would be health. And the others 9 are war, politics, economics, education, sex, entertainment, labor, law, religion, and health. So this subject falls under religion, right? Somewhat in entertainment, because sometimes some churches can be total entertainment, right? Okay, so as I was saying in the other video, I was giving reasons for being moderate, but I've watched the clip several times, and I'm also going to pay attention to the people who have responded either against or in favor of Marvin Sapp, right? Again, my intention is not to defamate or defame anybody's religion, their church, how they get down in their spiritual life. I'm often reminded of the passage where the deity speaks to Moses or Musa or Moshe, and he tells him to take his shoes off because he's on holy land. And when we're talking about people's religion and their spiritual understanding and how they come to the deity, we are indeed on holy land. So I tread lightly. My intent is not to offend. It's only to educate and to look at the document or the concept as a part of our cultural iconography. All right. So everybody knows the backstory of the issue with the incident with Pastor Sapp. Okay. It happened in the Pentecostal Assemblies of the World Incorporated at their, I don't know what the formal term that would be, whether it's a conclave or meeting, whatever it is, on March the 29th, 2024. But with all those things being said, I looked at a few videos. One of these videos was from a guy, all things theology. And I'm looking at one of the pastors that was defending Marvin Sapp, and this guy's name is John Hanna, or what his people call him, John Honeybun Hanna. And just by his performance in defending Marvin Sapp, this guy, he comes out and he bends over. He bends over in a sexual way, and he doesn't expose his behind, but he just shows his behind, right? And he speaks on how many times have you heard close the door, close the door. Okay. My background is in a connectional church, and I never heard that term before. If you would say close the door to me, I would think that, that's going to be a fire hazard or something. If you close the doors of the church or whatever, hey, it looked like a fire hazard to me, right? And the tone in which Marvin Sapp told the ushers to close the door, it was as if the ushers had no knowledge to close the doors. It was like a surprise to these people, right? And then he further went on to say, hey, we're going to all leave here together. Or you're not going anywhere. The only place you're going is to the restaurant after the service is over. And then he goes on to raise, I think his goal was $40,000. Now, mind you that the people had already paid to be in the conference. He was asking $20 of everybody that was in there and $100 for the people that were on stage. He further went on to talk about him having to pay his, I guess it would be his annual fees, assessments, in order to sit in the pulpit, right? And he talked about, when he was struggling and so forth and so forth. So, in my opinion, there was a little coercion, a little manipulation going on there. But being that it was Pentecostal church and I'm not familiar with their modalities, it may have been totally normal for them. Okay, but for me, it wasn't normal. Right? So this guy in his all things theology YouTube response, he went into a subject about the mega church and how it has focused on the prosperity gospel, or otherwise getting rich and sowing seeds in the ministry, and by sowing seeds in the ministry, you're going to get a blessing in return. Okay. So if we go back to the biblical text, where is that concept birthed? Where is it born? And so we have to go back to the Old Testament. So in the Old Testament, if my memory serves me correct, it would probably be in the book of Hebrews. But there's a story of Abraham. Abraham's coming from a battle for the people that stole Lot. And he meets a priestly figure, Melchizedek, to be exact. He meets Melchizedek on the way from a victory. So he gives Melchizedek 1/10 of the spoils of battle, right? So that's my understanding of where the tithe and the 10% comes from. But let's further examine the concept of giving and offerings. So we will go back to the book of Leviticus, or Vayikra, in the Hebrew text, right? So in Vayikra, or Leviticus, there are several types of offering. You have the burnt offering, the grain offering, the peace offering, the sin offering, and the guilt offering. All right. In Hebrew, the burnt offering is the olah, right, which is a bull. They all have their different types of offerings. But that word olah, similar to Eloah, Elohim, or even the word for the world, olam, right? The grain offering, the minach, which is a offering of grain with oil and frankincense, right? The peace offering is the shalem, or shalom, or peace. So it's the peace offering, right? Then you have the sin offering, or the guilt offering, which is the awsham, right? Which is 10% of a ephah, which is a measurement of weight in ancient Hebrew tradition, right? So that's where the concept of giving 10% of an offering comes from, right? But also in those offerings, you have first fruit offerings, which is the best that you can have, right? That you giving off of the, like later on in the biblical text, it will talk about Jesus in the marriage in Cana at the wedding, when he brought out his best wine last, right? Which was akin to him like a first fruit, giving his best, right? So that's how these offerings came down into Romanized Christianity. One more quick thing about it. Like, even when that bull was sacrificed, or those lambs were sacrificed in certain offerings, I think that would probably have been in the in one of the burnt offerings or guilt offerings, where a female lamb could be used or whatever. Each priest, each person had their piece of meat, right? Just like a lot of Southern households. Everybody knows what piece of chicken that you get, what piece of meat that you get, but that comes from the Levite tradition as well, right? So in the biblical text, there is a history of giving and different offerings, and offerings being performed a specific way, okay? But the big thing about this Marvin Sapp thing is that there's oftentimes a portrayal of black preachers being parasites on their congregations, right? It's nothing new to it. So if we look at today's landscape, many of the political leaders and political bosses. They come to the black church looking for support, right? We can go back to the time where Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was approached by Lyndon Baines Johnson and the Democratic Party to switch over from being Republicans to Democrats because of Barry Goldwater basically opposing the Civil Rights Act of 64, 65. Okay, so when these politicians get in bed with the preachers and the preachers get in bed with the politicians, and the preachers get involved in the street life, all about making money, there's this caricature of black preachers being out for one thing, and that's the money. I do like Reverend Ike's philosophy on certain things, but he has a quote where he's talking about getting out of the ghetto into the get-mo, right? And you can't lose with the things that I use. A lot of that goes back to New Thought. Today we know it as the law of attraction, and so forth and so forth, the prosperity gospel. Okay? So basically, the church is a business, and it works on certain economic principles. And that's simply what we saw and what we're seeing in this controversy with Marvin Sapp. Whether Marvin Sapp is a decent person or whether he was being manipulative or coercive, whatever, that's for you to decide. I just wanted to give a little background into where these things come from. But like I said in the other video, one of the 5 pillars of Islam is zakat. To be a true believer in Islam, you are commanded by Allah, Azza wa Jalla, subhanahu wa ta'ala, to give to those that are less fortunate than yourself, right? So you'll also find this in traditional African religions, where you give to the Babalawo, or you give to a priest, you give to a Malam, or you give to a Marabu, right? And you have people in all of these traditions that will use it for personal gain. And you have those that will use it and use their blessings to bless other people. So there's nothing new under the sun about giving to religious leaders. It's just the spirit in which you give and the spirit in which they come to receive. Sometimes you got pastors and congregations that do a lot of good work in the community, and it takes finance to do this. But there is also something wrong when the pastor has a fleet of Cadillacs, Mercedes, Lear jets, all of the entrapments of the super wealthy. And I think that's what the people are dealing with nowadays. The people are dealing with nowadays of being fleeced by these charlatans and these manipulators. Okay, something very personal to me. I went to seminary. I studied and I got a master's of divinity. So I know the truth that is taught in these seminaries. Some people would say cemeteries, right? But a lot of people, they go and they hide behind, I would say, the big legs of Jesus in order to make a living for themselves. They don't want to get out here and put their shoulders to the wheel. But there was a time when the black preacher was bivocational, when the preacher was a plumber, the preacher was a farmer, the preacher, preaching was just his Sunday thing, right? But as time evolved, and I would say itinerancy, ministry declined, you had more preachers that were professional preachers. I've been around guys that were studying to be preachers who don't want to cut their yard. They want somebody to come from the church and do this for them and do that for them. And I think the brother in All Things Theology, in his assessment, he was saying that that's why some people don't come to church anymore. And I would say he's 100% correct. But his analysis was that that's not a good enough reason not to come to church. But in my opinion, you know, I really don't like to be around things like that. I don't want to be around weak spirits, especially weak-spirited men that take advantage of women, that take advantage of the elderly, take advantage of the children, take advantage of women, right? And they use it's a grift, you know what I'm saying? It's a cult of personality. They care more for the preacher than they care for their husbands at home. You know, and you can also find a similar relationship between people and the doctors, right? People that hold positions of power, right? So I had this on me, and I had to get it off of me. I'm going to post both videos at the same time. Hope that you watch both of them so you can see that I'm generally trying to be as unbiased as I can. I'm not my brother's keeper. I'm my brother's brother. And I try to get past my bias to be able to speak truth into the heart, into the soul of a person that I come into contact with. So with that, I say peace. I also say, as always, if you've lived a day and you haven't learned anything, you wasted a day. If you find it in your heart, like, subscribe, share, and help me grow this YouTube channel so I can impart what I know with others. This is my sincere wish and my sincere desire. If there are any mistakes, they're my own, and if there's any good in it, they come from the Most High God. Peace.